you've read that comic, you know that that is unbelievably detailed. And there are times where I wish I had a magnifying glass to look at that art to see every little thing and every little panel.
Right.
So like, you know, the broad spectrum of what artists are doing with it, it can go from, you know, look at the full page back, see the art all in context, you know, somebody like Alex Ross, where it's this wonderful painted image sort of thing. But there are times where the zoom-in functionality could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you look at an example like, geez, I forget how long, within the past year, it was a year and a half, Marvel put out a book called The Ultimates 3, and the first issue came out, and art by Joe Maniera, who's one of the, you know, one of the most popular kind of superhero artists. It was digitally colored, and it looked like crap on paper. It literally looked like brown mud over the characters. Somehow I got my hands on the digital version of it, and it looked amazing. The colors popped on the monitor in a way different than it does in the print. So that there's a way to utilize the technology on the different delivery platform that's different than what we're used to.
And that's, you know, I think that's what we're all hoping to see is new ways of using, not just trying to put the old art, you know, the traditional static art on there, but finding ways to make this medium unique. You know, you talk about how, you know, when you're close in, you see things that you don't see when you're way back. And so to play on that, like, who in here is familiar with the artist Chuck Close? He does huge immense murals where if you're really up close, it just looks like noise. But as soon as you back up far enough, it becomes a photorealistic image of usually Chuck Close, but he's the narcissist that way. And so I think with the online comic book, maybe we'll see with like the Shadows Never Sleep Zoom comic, where you can zoom in, and that actually becomes a part of the narrative. That could actually become a part of the narrative.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that should be the advantage that we take of it, is that we're forced by paper to be linear. There's no other way really to be. But once you explore the digital possibilities, and we've kicked around a number of scenarios where you go in and out of story, different viewpoints, it changes the potential of what kind of story.
And also if you look at the tools, I mean, like with Google SketchUp, you know, you can create 3D, you know, environments for the characters to exist in. So why can't we spin and why can't, you know, like, I don't know, I mean, the possibilities are kind of endless.
I can't stand CG mixed with 2D art. It's so obvious.
Well, I mean, the very letter CG, that simply stands for computer graphics. And many comic books these days are computer graphics. I mean, they are colorized, they're drawn completely on the computer.
Yeah. So look at
I'll take you 1 second. I do want to, you can stay there, just 1 minute. I want to give somebody who Twitter a chance real quick first.
Twitter comes first.
Twitter's
Know your place.
Yeah, they've been waiting. Why do you see so much flash for UI? And I'll take a stab at that. It's because generally artists like flash and developers hate flash.
I hate artists.
Well, okay, most of the designers in the web world I know love Flash because they have control over it. They can control exactly how things work, exactly how things appear in a way that they don't have that same control with core web technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Speaking as someone who makes his living on those core web technologies, I like to try and give them their chance first. And if anybody knows of a web comic book that makes use of those technologies over Flash, please let me know. Please let me know. And we'll have contact information at the end. So,
I'd love to help you with it.
okay. All right, go ahead.
I was just going to make the point that you have to consider your audience in this too. I'm sure that there are a lot of really creative, interesting ways that you can make entertaining and interactive, but with visual storytelling, a lot of the time, the whole reason you turn to visual storytelling is because you're too lazy to actually read it or get immersed in it or anything. You want story pushed at you. You want to sit in the movie theater or the TV or sit with your glass of tea reading a comic book and be immersed in the world and not have to worry about clicking through things or, oh, next page, previous page, zoom in, zoom out, which I think is part of what makes the UI so difficult.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, because sometimes I'll see examples where you're constantly clicking. Now, the one example that I was talking about before that used the space in very creative ways, you had to click each time you wanted to move to the next thing. Now, it's nice that you control, unlike in film or television, you, like print, control the pace that you're going through, it could be faster or slower in this way. But yeah, are you really comfortable as
two guys I do my website with, we all read at very different speeds. I'm a very fast reader, while one of my other guys is very slow. And so everybody has their own way of reading. I think it's just, again, it's just another tool to read.
Yeah, and some people, I mean, I introduced recently to my book club, we read The Watchmen. Most of the people in my book club had never read a graphic novel before, and they were amazed, but most of them, I would point out things to the art in them, and they would be like, oh, I never saw that, because they were spending more time reading the words, rather than reading the images, not realizing that visual literacy is something different than reading literacy. I'm sorry.
I mean, I think the closest we came with Zuda is almost no work. I mean, so you're getting a page, like you say, you have a page, you have to turn the page. Actually, two pages, in some cases, but there's always an ad stand. But with Zuda, it's relatively easy to consume that page. You give a mild click, and then you're usually getting more. Panel by panel, it's driving me nuts if it wasn't a short piece. Although the guy did brilliant work on it, I thought. But, you know,
I actually prefer the panel by panel format. One website, I think, Collective, does it really well, is Activate, which is a bunch of independent artists. And all that they do is, the majority of them are single panels, but when they update, it's just one panel. And I honestly believe that that's the best approach for publishing it, at least online. For me, those are the kinds of comics that I read, because I feel that it's more like storyboards. You know, storyboards for a movie, and you have a very limited space to view that image, and you really can't play with this space. And you were talking about how y'all play with like making it more interactive, and you can choose like your storyline and everything. But Scott McCloud talked a lot about that, and it's failed. It's totally right? And it's something that really hasn't picked up. The only way I think it could work is like, I remember reading those books where it's like choose your own adventure novels. It'd be so awesome if there were comics like that.
Well, Scott did that. Scott did a choose your own adventure kind of thing. Yeah, with Scott. If you go to Scott, if you haven't heard of Scott McCloud, he wrote the book Understanding Comics and Reinventing Comics, and he's an amazing creator. He did Zot for years.
You can just stop it, he wrote the book.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But if you go to scottmccloud.com, he's done experiment after experiment after experiment of digital comics, and a lot of them, he was doing the Zoom thing, but through HTML, where you click a panel and then you go to, it's just simple hrefs going into the next one, to the next one. But he's done other ones where he'll lay out, you get an image of the whole tree of where the story will go, and it goes in all the different directions. And the issue with single panel comics, though, is that what makes visual storytelling so interesting, at least for me, is the juxtaposition, and that's what Scott McCloud talks a lot about, is that you've got two panels next to each other, and there's a guy standing in front of a door, and then the guy's not there anymore, the door's there. Your head completes the thought that he went through that door. And when you have single panel, you lose that kind of, and there's so much like pacing and pauses and beats that happen in comics that single panels get the story across, but you lose part of that visual aspect of the storytelling. And so you need to have some sort of linear aspect, even if it is just on the screen. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
And I'd also say, just because something hasn't worked in the past, doesn't always mean that it doesn't work. It may just not have been done the right way, or it may not have been the time for it to be